All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It is Dave, the real music observer here, observing real music in real time for real people just like you and just like me. Steve Perry and the big interview with Dan Rather last night. All kidding aside and all horrible Dan voiceovers aside, this was a holy crap Batman interview. This was probably Steve Perry's most revealing, most interesting, most bombshell oriented interview since he's gotten back in the public spotlight. Uh, Before I get into some of the nitty gritty details here, the beginning of the interview was covering a lot of the same ground, and I was actually starting to get a little irritated about hearing the story about the Sopranos again and Don't Stop Believin', and because it's been covered so much, and I was hoping for some meat and potatoes, something that was a little different. We didn't get into any of the relationships he had with other members of the band Journey. It really seems as though Perry and maybe even the interviewers understand that there's been a very clean break between himself and the rest of the group, and therefore there were no questions related to, say, if Perry was to work with Neil Schon again. So that was, I guess, expected. And it really doesn't take away from the bombshell nature of this interview. The first bombshell, if you want to call it that, is that Steve Perry admits that he was abused or violated, as he used that word. And Steve Perry is very careful to talk about this. I think around age 8 or 9, and it suggests some type of abuse. Not sure if it was physical abuse or sexual abuse, but violated, I think, is the word Steve Perry used, and I think the connotation is probably more sexual abuse than physical abuse. But again, the fact that this comes out in this interview is the first, holy crap, Batman jaw dropping moment. Perry also admits during the interview that he has a child. There was tons of speculation. When I was first doing interviews or interviews, when I was first doing interviews for Steve Perry, when I was first doing videos about Steve Perry, all these people were coming at me with, "Do you know about Steve Perry's kid?" And Steve Perry had a relationship with this person, that person, and all these theories coming at me, and I didn't really look into that because, number one, I didn't know how to verify any of it, and number two, I hadn't really much interest in it. But there are a lot of people out there who, I guess, knew this, and so maybe I'm late to the party. But Steve Perry admits that he has a child, and he admits he has some grandchildren, which I think is cool. It's no judgment here. I think it's awesome that Steve Perry was able to say this. Almost, I don't want to say proudly, but almost saying, hey, I've got grandkids. And you could tell there was a sense of pride there. The rest of this interview, I think, really just sheds light on the humanity of this guy, like the struggles he had with fame, the struggles he had, obviously, maybe with some addictive behaviors. He likes to call them party enhancements and so forth. I think Steve Perry is very careful with language. He probably could use stronger language, but I think he might feel a sense of embarrassment, or he may feel as though that he's failing his fans or something like that. I think at this stage, where everybody is in their life, including yours truly, for Steve Perry to just admit that he's one of us, in a way, I think is really cool, really refreshing. This is a great human being, from what I can tell. I've been critical in a sense that he tends to be a bit of a recluse, or was for so long, and People were waiting. But technically, that's none of our business. You know, technically, it's as if we're asking this guy to hurry up and make us happy with music and so forth, and he's been struggling and working through all of these issues. I mean, to be abused as a kid, obviously his parents' divorce really affected him deeply. Um, and it seems as though fame was kind of like the icing on the cake, and he needed to just regroup. He admits, by the way, that he has gone to therapy, and I think I alluded a long time ago in a couple of videos. I had an unverified source that was feeding information to me about Steve Perry's therapy, and still to this day, I don't know for sure if that person is legit or not. Seems to be, but I don't know. All I know is that Perry had to work through these issues. These issues were not, just like your typical rock star going to the Betty Ford Clinic or something like that. This is somebody who had a lot of pain, and he had a lot of trust issues, and he had disappointments all over the place. I mean, his first band, one of the members of the band was killed in a car accident, prior to that band getting a record deal. So, I mean, this guy has seen a lot. He's seen a lot. He's experienced a lot. He had the meteoric rise, and then he couldn't continue. He just couldn't continue. But if you go see this interview, I think you'll be surprised. I think it will make you like Steve Perry more. I signed up for Access TV. I have a 7-day trial now. I wasn't watching Access last night when the interview aired live, but it deeply affected me. I watched it and I thought to myself, man, this is a good guy. This is a guy who we can look up to, who we can admire, not only on just the talent stuff, the fact that he's got one of the great voices in rock history, but the fact that he seems to be somebody who's gone through a lot, who we can learn from and support. So Steve Perry, the big interview, was really a big interview. Good job, Dan Rather. The big interview with Steve Perry was actually big. And you know what? Dan Rather asked good questions. So kudos to Dan. Kudos to everybody involved in this. And We're Still Here continues to climb the charts. So it's all good stuff, folks. If I've said anything in the past that's kind of been not kind to Steve Perry, I want to just say, that I'm sorry for that. And I think I have a new perspective about Steve Perry. I'm not saying Steve Perry can do no wrong, but Steve Perry's a good guy, and we should all be grateful that we've lived through this era where the music was the best, and Steve Perry was a huge part of that. All right, I'm done. Good thing I'm wearing sunglasses because it's, the eyes are getting a little watery here, so talk to you soon.